Hello. Welcome back to The Young Voter. Of course, the biggest item of news this week, and of course today, is the resignation of a 30-year-old king, or at least not technically a king, but 30-year-old dictator Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, who today resigned his post as president of Egypt. This, of course, is the most important bit of news of the week and the most important bit of international political news. I just wanted, of course, to lay that out there. Everyone probably already knows that. But I think it's very important now that we make sure, as President Obama said, that the Egyptian military that now runs the country proceed with a process of democratization and a rewriting of the constitution which involves people from multiple groups of the Egyptian population and from diverse areas, so that the new constitution of Egypt can be truly inclusive and fully inclusive of all Egyptians. And in September, there can be true, free, and fair elections. So hopefully that will happen, but for the moment, let's celebrate that another dictator has been overthrown in the Middle East. Now, in terms of political news, the biggest item of news this week is really the resignation of a New York congressman, a Republican. His name is Christopher Lee. Apparently, he had pretended on Craigslist to be a divorced man in his late 30s, a lobbyist in Washington, and has been trying to meet some women, when he was in fact a married congressman from New York, again, from upstate New York, with a boy. So when this item of news broke this past week, yesterday, the congressman resigned almost immediately. It was pretty fast, a pretty fast resignation. The scandal broke in the morning. The congressman resigned in the evening. People are calling it the fastest scandal ever. Of course, he didn't really break the law, obviously, because he was only attempting to cheat on his wife, so he didn't actually cheat on his wife. But people have been speculating that there's some other business going on, that there's some other things going on there. So keep an eye on this story. I'm sure there will be more coming out about this. But certainly, that's an interesting piece of information. And his resignation also will lead to a special election that will be called in the next month or so in his district in New York, in upstate New York, which is traditionally a Republican district, but that perhaps could be in play since Christopher Lee has resigned. Christopher Lee was elected to Congress in 2008. He was reelected in 2010, and he has been a fairly run-of-the-mill Republican, not really Tea Party backed, just an average conservative from upstate New York, as conservative as New Yorkers can be nowadays. But now he has been taken down, and he joins the crowd of disgraced Republicans who have had affairs and whatnot, though he didn't actually have an affair. He was in the process of having an affair. Of course, he includes Senator David Vitter from Louisiana, Senator John Ensign from Nevada. David Vitter, of course, was reelected, surprisingly, in Louisiana this past election season, and John Ensign is up for re-election in 2012 and might not survive his primary. So he at least resigned. I think that's probably the one of the big things, as opposed to a lot of other Republican politicians who were like, what did I do? Why should I resign? I mean, David Vitter, for his whole prostitution shenanigans, never resigned, and John Ensign for having used campaign funds to pay off the family of his lover, he never resigned or didn't receive any flack at all. And the interesting thing is the one person who steps down didn't even commit an affair. At least, not that we know of so far. But certainly, perhaps the juiciest piece of political news this week. In other news, Senator John Kyle announced that he wasn't running for re-election. He is not going to be running for re-election in 2012 in Arizona. And Senator Jim Webb, the Democrat from Virginia, will not be running for re-election, meaning that both of those seats now are more competitive. The Virginia seat now proudly moves into the toss-up category, with only a small number of Democrats perhaps able to hold this seat, but certainly a competitive race. The Democrats are hoping that DNC Chairman Tim Kaine jumps into the race. He polls well against former Senator George Allen, who is rerunning to try to take back the seat that Jim Webb won 6 years ago, or at least in 2006. And John Kyle is not running for election. There are a lot of people jumping into that race on the Democratic side. Gabrielle Giffords, before she had been shot, expressed an interest in running for that race. So if she recovers, does she still show interest to run for that seat? We don't know, but in terms of 2012, that's really the information we have. In terms of the Senate, 2 more retirements this week. Finally, of course, the Conservative Political Action Conference, which was being hosted in Washington this week, has distinguished speakers, and of course there's a presidential struggle. But one of the last-minute speakers was Donald Trump. And of course he was touting his credentials as a job creator, someone who really knows how to deal with business, etc. You know, someone who goes in, bankrupts companies, and then sells them, etc. You know, nice, sleazy, clean stuff that Donald Trump loves to engage in. He definitely has the expertise to become president, and he really gave a shout-out to Ron Paul, saying that he has no chance to become president. Of course, he received the largest applause for that comment, and also the largest boost for that comment, greatest number of dissent for that comment. So take it as you may. Certainly, Donald Trump has some fighting words for Ron Paul. But there's one person who is less electable to the office of President of the United States than Ron Paul, and that is Donald Trump. He is perhaps the most unelectable person in the United States. I think I would get elected president before Donald Trump. Donald Trump is an awful businessman. He was an awful businessman. He basically screwed up every company he ever had a hand in. And he's also the most fake, person on TV. He's awful. He's disliked. I'm just trying to square with you, Donnie. Okay, you're nowhere near electable, compared to Ron Paul. Okay, there are plenty of people that would support Paul over you. Okay, let's get real now. Okay, I know TV gets people's egos inflated, but just trying to keep Donnie here in check. All right. Thank you again for watching The Young Voter.